very good afternoon to you and a warm welcome to the Citizens Chat Show here on Civic Space TV. We are streaming on YouTube. I'm your host, Judith Atim, and it's always a pleasure to have you join us. If you haven't already, do subscribe to our channel. Drop us a comment, be a part of the conversation, but also we encourage you to follow us on our various social media platforms on Facebook, on X, and also on TikTok, that is Civic Space TV. So today, our topic is beyond the nomination of MPs, the high-stakes agenda for the 2026 MP candidates. And in the studio, we're quite a lean team today. We have Dr. Robert Ojiambo, head of the History Department at Kyambongo University. Good afternoon, Dr. Ojiambo.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon, viewers.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Also,
welcome back.
Thank you.
Last time we missed you.
I missed you guys too, and I'm happy to be back. We also have Mr. Joseph Ochieno, UPC Idelogue, political commentator. Most welcome to the show, Joseph.
Pleasure to be here. Very nice seeing you again.
Thank you.
You know, just your absence in 1 week, it's like another year. What's going on?
Oh, really?
What's going on?
But you were in very good hands with Priscilla, of course.
Priscilla's
I watched,
fantastic, like
exactly,
you.
yes.
But
She's amazing.
in-house is in-house.
She's in-house too. We'll come to that later. Well, thank you very much. So, just to let you know, we're quite a lean team. The rest are busy. You know, it's a campaign season. Nominations are on. So, people are having other engagements, especially the political actors that we would have loved to be here, especially from the ruling party, Major which has other engagements, and also Dr. Sarah is not around, but they do send you their apologies. They'll be back with us next week. So just very, very quickly, you know very well that on Wednesday and Thursday this week, the Electoral Commission concluded the two-day nomination exercise for parliamentary candidates, and that means the field is now set for the 2026 general elections. But as the campaign period begins, that's from November 10th to January 13th, the public is not just interested in who made the list, but also what they intend to do once elected. On the show today, our discussion moves beyond the paperwork to the core issues that resonate with every Ugandan household, which include the suffocating high cost of living and the unsustainable cost of public administration, of course, among a host of others that our guests would highlight in the course of our conversation. But before we delve into the heart of our discussion, we would also like to extend our sincere condolences to the families who lost their loved ones in Tuesday's tragic accident on the Gulu-Kampala highway, and we do condole with these families. But I'd also like to hear the thoughts of my panelists here, just your quick reflections in about 3 minutes each, if possible, on this tragedy that we're confronting as a country.
Yeah, you know, Judith, in Uganda now, accident is competing with the malaria, with the killer diseases like malaria and others. In fact, every day there are so many people who lose their life courtesy to accidents, especially border. You just need to sit somewhere in town and you see what happens there. A law student just died in Mukono in 3rd year, and it was just not a normal law student. She was a serious activist who was preparing herself to be a very useful person in this country, whom I don't think would have just ended into the courtrooms or the law chambers. But this one on Karuma Road was tragic. When I looked at it, how it happened, it showed a very big problem in our country. It showed that our roads are terribly bad. The roads are just too small. And yet that is the northern corridor that takes people up to Juba and so many other places. But also our drivers are mad, because if you see how that thing collided, you just wonder what was in the mind of those bus drivers, because mainly it was the two bus drivers who had problems. The other small vehicles were just caught into the thing, but there was one Harrier where also there were problems, and the man tried, of course, to swerve off from the Harrier and just landed in a bus, and all the... But yesterday also, Ginger Diocese also woke up into trauma when the bishop, the Right Reverend Martin Wamika, died yesterday.
That was on Wednesday.
Yeah, on Wednesday,
Yeah.
indeed, on Wednesday. And I think we condole with the people of Jinja. Of course, this one of Gulu Highway is big because it involves so many families, it involves so many people. These guys were working with different communities. So many children become orphaned, and so many other issues. And the government, what it can do is to give each one who has died 5 million. I don't know for what. I think we need a better policy on how to help people who have died in such a thing, so that it doesn't look like people who get into that, they are given Mabugo 5 million, and those who have gotten injured 1 million. There is nothing, we don't hear a statement from the Minister of Transport and the Works. We don't hear any statement from we had some statements from the commandants, but this is something that if it happened in an organized country, there would be a concern of the country to find out why such a thing is happening. You remember just a few years ago, there was such a tragic accident on which involved a Rwandan bound bus. And what was surprising is that the Rwanda government sent helicopters to pick their citizens on the scene of accident, and ours remained there to languish and die from there. I think in that same year we lost in the same route, we lost this tycoon called the one who knocked a stationed trailer, the one who is in charge of transport. This person, who?
Aponye.
Aponye. We lost that one. You remember those in COVID, he was one of the suppliers of food. Last year, we lost LC5 in Kamuli, who died on Kayunga Road. So it is becoming a tragedy, and I think Katumbo Amala needs to sit down with his team and see how they can save lives on the roads. This condemning victims is not going to help. We need Boda Boda. I tell you, Atim, if you go to Mulago, there is even now a ward called Boda Boda ward, and you are lucky to find those with broken legs, but those who die instantly are just so many, we don't even have records. So I think it is something that a country needs to come up and think on how to resolve them. But the most important thing is to work on the road transport, but also to improve on the licensing of the drivers. Those bus drivers, once they have caused the havoc in this bus, tomorrow they just switch and go to another bus. And you find them at the bus park even bragging that for me, I have already so far killed 100. And the other one says, me, I'm following you at 70. The other day I killed the whole family. So it is something we need to, people who drive. Those days when I was growing up, there were a certain caliber of people who drove. In fact, I used to ask my parents, how come it is Muslims who drive buses? Majority of the drivers would be Kasim, would be Zamiru, and so on. And the answer I was given, you see, Muslims on average are sober.
They don't drink.
And two, it was the only job they would do because they had been denied the missionary education. So they really valued their job and they protected it. They even handed it to their sons and moved on. But now anybody who comes from nowhere, he has been driving a pickup, is given a bus, and he just goes to kill people.
Thank you, Dr. Ojiambo. Joseph, just very quickly as well, your thoughts on this tragedy, this national tragedy that we are confronting as a country. And also, of course, if you could, he has also highlighted the death of the Archbishop of Busoga. The bishop, rather, yeah.
Yeah, I have a very personal experience, personal story with the northern route. I lost close members of my family in a major traffic accident, and our family has not fully recovered, and I don't think we shall anytime soon, because there are 10 little orphans who were left in that, and huge amount of gaps. Today still, I really don't allow anybody, predominantly, maybe this is my security exposure, to drive me in certain routes within Uganda. In fact, I predominantly drive myself, in part because of that. But definitely on the northern route, partly for psychological reasons and partly because of this, I only have possibly 2 people whom I can allow to drive me. And then 3, except that when I've got to go to Gulu and Kitgum, but when I am traveling to West Nile, predominantly I choose to take another very terrible route, Hoima route, terrible potholes towards the NRH and Kwanzi, but I consider it relatively less harsh because of speed and fewer traffic, less traffic, because the other is the main highway. Now, that is how bad it is. Is it drivers? Is it vehicles, DMCs? What is it exactly? But before that, Mr. Museveni, in a campaign period, came out just to insult Ugandan victims of the NRA failure by committing to the family 5 million shillings. A UPC administration would not only have a national sense of purpose, including granting days of mourning, which come with obligations, but something slightly more towards the families, but most importantly, a minister for transport or somebody related with road safety would be resigning, if not sacked. Dr. Ojiambo, that is what is done. You can recycle Katumba Wamala, who is an NRA soldier. This guy's special job is to defend us from national security, not an expert on road safety or road construction. Because it's actually campaign time, if only Ugandans were awake, if only these guys' citizens have not been bewitched in some spaces, we would be saying that NRA should lose votes as a result of this. Because it's a major policy failure. It's an infrastructure question, it's a safety question, it's a security question. You talk about the road size. Yes, it's shameful that the road from Kampala to Gulu, the size of the tarmac is the tire size that we UPC built in the 60s. Why would it not have been expanded? But apart from that, what these voters don't know is that, Dr. Ojiambo, 50% of the people who may have died on this, had it been the case, Judith, that this NRA bunch had not killed our rail services, many of those people would have been going home by train. Had it been that these guys had not killed our air transportation, domestic air travel, maybe 10% of them would have traveled by air. And when we talk about air, because I discussed this in another program, Judith, domestic flights in an economy which is expanding is not an expensive thing. Actually, across here in Kenya, the equivalent would be $100 US equivalent, and you're off the other end. Cheaper for me to travel to Gulu, cheaper for me to travel to West Nile than to drive. Cheaper for me to travel to Kabale, cheaper for me to travel to Kanungu and Ntungamo, where I was the other day. That is how terrible NRA has sunk you guys. And every other time we're on some of these programs, we have conversation, people think, oh, Ochieno is angry. No, you guys, your futures are being broken.
Well, thank you. Is that it? Or you just have a minute?
Yeah. But I just wanted to conclude with this. So that's how bad it is. But that said, we cannot talk about this, and I don't know that I can talk about this very specific limited accident without referring to Angela, that girl of Mukono, because I happen to have been communicating with her. She was extremely political and, in fact, a sharp Ugandan nationalist. Actually knew, I think, from her social media spaces, I think that she had picked up low, but I'd even forgotten about it. She's an extremely radical young Ugandan nationalist, absolutely pretty. It sank my heart when I saw it. And finally, of course, you know that last week, Raila Odinga was buried on Sunday. I just hasten to mention this. Raila is not only the father of Luo nations in terms of import, but predominantly the most impactful political figure in Kenya since independence. That has surpassed both Kenyatta and his own father, Jaramogi. Dr. Ojiambo, I was there. It's extraordinary moments. But beyond that, Raila was Minister for Transport and for a very short time broke and reorganized the infrastructure system in Kenya because these things can be done, and together some of the economic reforms, hence part of the broader infrastructure question on the continent. I'm not wasting your time, Julie.
No.
Do you know the Kampala-Gulu Road is the feeder road to Great North Road, something that we studied in primary school, that Great North Road is from Cape to Cairo. And although the primary link goes via Nairobi into Kenya, the other feeder link is basically that road. And here in Uganda is crudely shameful after 40 years of NRA. Do you know infrastructure? Trans-Africa Highway is Mombasa to Accra. The Mukono mess, this one here, is actually part of the Trans-Africa Highway. Now you see the Ugandan element of it. That is how bad it is. That's how bad it is. And as I said, with Raila Odinga dead and buried, I don't know which other new leaders emerge within this East African community to be able to make sure that the deaths that are wasted and lost, like this other one we've just had and we're talking about, unnecessary loss of huge amount of lives on the Kampala-Gulu Road, is sort of like business as usual. Poor Ugandans, today we're talking nominations, poor Ugandans, tomorrow it will be forgotten. Sad.
Sad indeed. Sad indeed. Well, thank you for these perspectives. So now we move to the heart of our discussion, which is the nomination of the candidates. Of course, some of these issues should definitely be discussed, and we would hope to hear the different candidates also share their thoughts on how they intend to contribute to policy change or policy reform to improve infrastructure and other things to basically make, secure the lives of Ugandans and also just make things a little easy and comfortable. So just in numbers, we don't know as of now how many people have been duly nominated to contest for the various positions, but this is what the final tally will look like. At the end of it all, when the elections are over, the directly elected member of parliament, we should have 353 people representing 353 constituencies. That's according to the Electoral Commission. We are looking for 146 women to represent, to be the district woman representatives to parliament in 2026. We are also looking for 5 representatives of older persons to parliament, 5 representatives of persons with disabilities to parliament, 5 representatives of workers, and then, and the youth as well. The other special interest group, which is the UPDF, has not yet been elected, and that will be done a little later. We still don't know when. But just to give you an idea, in each of these constituencies, you're having probably 5 people, 3 to 5 people showing interest being nominated. So you can do the math and you will see that this can, from a conservative estimate, you see you're already having about 2,000 people on the ballot come 2026 contesting for these various positions, whether it's directly elected MP, woman MP, older persons, etc., etc. So we need to now go into the discussion, the heart of the discussion. And I want to just from what you've observed, what you've seen around your areas here in Kampala, and also what you've been seeing in the news, just what do you think hits you when you watch this exercise and the people turning up to be nominated and so on? If I'll start with you, Dr. Ojiambo. Before we go into the issues that we expect them to actually, to shape their campaign.
Of course, the nomination has been quiet. It has been quiet. We have not yet received a lot of commotion. There was only Mitiana, where a NUP candidate did not have qualifications on the first day. I don't know what happened on the second day. I don't know whether she finally got the Form 6 equivalent, because the Electoral Commission said that the papers that had been given only stopped her at O-level, Senior 4. The other very interesting thing which we would want to see how it builds up, Mufumbiro was nominated from jail.
In absentia, yes.
So that becomes a confirmation of what happened one time when Kizza Besigye was also nominated from jail. So now we are confident that I can be nominated even if I'm abroad. But here it was possible, because I later found out that the prison services have a commissioner, a sitting commissioner there. So you can sign the nomination forms and is able to commission from there. And this time, I don't know what happened. The NRM did not play tricks to hide the commissioner or not to allow Mufumbiro to access him. But I must say that that was okay. It gives a fair judgment to him. Those were the two outstanding things. The rest, of course, the other thing which also surprised the people, Norbert Mao was nominated in Peche Laro division to represent DP there as a member of parliament. I don't say that he's not qualified, but it looked like an afterthought. After failing to come as a presidential candidate and ended up being a peggy boy of His Excellency Yoweri Museveni. So the peggy boy has decided to become now an MP. And I think he also, this Mpuga party also did not bring a presidential candidate. So successfully, most of his people were nominated mainly in Masaka, Ben Bwanika and himself. And yesterday, Masaka was a fun fair. All the musicians were in that place. It turned into a discotheque. The other places it was calm. Of course, Tororo is another surprise where it was given city status, but all the MPs have been nominated on the old constituencies and the municipality. And I think that was the only. The other issue is that really we need to give kudos to National Unity Platform. They have managed to field a candidate at least in over 90% of the constituencies. Something that NRM has been boasting here, that there is no opposition party that can field the candidates in all constituencies. I think it would have been 100%. They had identified a 100% candidate, but some pulled out in the last minute. Oh, I'd forgotten the other drama was in Bukedea. In Bukedea, you remember, 4 candidates were denied by the Electoral Commission to stand, because according to the Electoral Commission, they are not residents, and therefore they were removed from the register, the voters register, so that they cannot be nominated. And they tried to go to court. The court system these days is funny. All the cases were dismissed on arrival. In fact, they wanted an injunction. The injunctions were denied, but the cases have been scheduled to be heard after nomination. In fact, they will be next week. And this is where I normally imagine that the court sometimes is not alive to some issues where fundamental human rights are concerned. The court is supposed to be alive to the matter in hand and solve the matter expeditiously. For I thought, why wouldn't court use its time and settle this matter within 1 day or 2 days? Because to find out whether somebody is a bona fide registered candidate does not take court a year. But they prolong things. They say, oh, file affidavit, I don't know this one. Then they bring technicalities to defeat justice. So for me, in all, that's what I can say. But it is not like what we have been having. Even the fanfare is not those days when a candidate was going to be nominated in Wakiso, to be nominated in Jinja, the fanfare that would be with it. Now, candidates have to go in hiding. Semuju had to travel in tukutuku so that nobody recognizes that.
But I thought that was also part of his strategy, perhaps, to probably show that he is in touch with the common man.
No, he was mainly beating the security because he didn't know what would happen. Because they are target MPs who are targeted. And it's unfortunate that anybody would target a member of parliament like Semuju, irrespective of where you belong. If you are a supporter of parliamentary democracy in Uganda, you would want the likes of Semuju, the likes of this man from Otuke, is called who? Odur. Is he Odur?
I think so.
Yes, Odur. Yeah. You would want such people who stand on the floor of parliament and say something that can be put in the Hansard. I have seen many people who stand up to talk in parliament, and a few minutes later they are told to retract. And if they don't retract whatever they have said, the speaker rules that it should be struck from the Hansard because the thing is not parliamentary.
Okay.
So for me, I really think that I don't know whether we are regressing. I don't know whether things are just changing, but I don't see that fanfare. I don't see that political mood. I don't see people being excited. I know there are people who even don't know that MPs are being nominated.
Joseph, just your observation of how the exercise has unfolded across the country. He thinks the lack of fanfare probably. Do you think it takes something away from the seriousness of the process or the involvement and participation of everybody, or not?
No, I think this is relative and could be a difference of opinion. And number two, also depends on which areas you were across the country. I have interestingly traveled, as I said, from the east and a few other places within the last few days. And it has been relatively different kind of spaces. I think it matters the candidates, it matters the kind of profile of people they have. But generally, I genuinely believe that nominations and campaigns should not bring the country to a standstill. And so I am not particularly sure that not having fanfare is bad. I think some of the fanfare thing as opportunities to blinden the people and to make the whole entire exercise expensive. But whatever the case, it's at the end of the day, it's very much about reaching out to people. I think where I agree with Robert particularly is the fact that we've not had much violence, and there shouldn't be. And this program has been preaching that we should not have a repeat of 2021 or earlier. And we're also saying that we put these guys on the spot. I have had a conversation with people, some of whom are associated with the state, and you get an impression from them that there's a deliberate effort to try and pull back, knowing very well and perhaps recognizing that anything closer to a repeat of the criminality that was subjected against the citizens by the state and their related agents last times could easily compel citizens to cross the line, and I don't think it would be in the interest of the state, and particularly it certainly would not be in the interest of NRA. So if it's a lesson learned by them, so be it. In terms of the personalities, of course, it's also true that I find it interesting, but I wonder what is very particular about my brother Norbert that concerned Dr. Ojiambo. Norbert just decided to go back to Parliament. To his credit, he became a chairman of a council, district council. He's been head of DP, and is now back to Parliament. The only interesting thing is that he's going to be campaigning DP, but vote Comrade Kaguta. So I find that very interesting, really contradictory. So I don't know how he's going to manage to navigate that with this electorate. That you know, I am DP, vote for me, but the other one is Mr. Museveni. That you can spread it across the country, as I said. Varies. I've had different kind of reports from different parts of the country, and generally, as I said, people have been on the watch out, on the lookout. I think the whole taste of the whole thing is going to be when the real campaign is launched for parliamentary candidates. In any case, I think this is also built on the back of presidential nominations that has been reasonably leveled and measured, and with the exception of a few attempts to taunt young Chagulanyi, there hasn't been that as much. So I think it's possibly too early for us to tell, but I would rather it is calmer and quieter than, you know, it's loud, even if loud is part of fanfare. Most importantly, whatever happens, I'm anxious that post these nominations, real issues come up, and that is issues that affect the people, and that politics, then people then go ahead and get elected, if at all, on the basis of what programs they've got on the table. Of course, naturally, this country is poorer without a UPC presidential candidate, and so therefore poorer without a UPC at the national platform to deliver alternative program, which I know is the best program, but of course, which unfortunately people are not going to get. But from a UPC perspective, some of the more lower level candidates that exist, I hope they'll normally do the needful, but unfortunately they're predominantly in Lango. We've got a few spread across the country, but I don't think that's going to be able to give us sufficient impact nationally. Finally, Beta Mongi and Ruth Acheng in Lira continues to be the nominations and campaigns of the future. Both of them pulled a huge amount of crowds. Both of them did massive artificial work to try and draw attention to their supporters. But I think it's possibly too early to tell what is going to happen.
So here's the thing. The presidential campaigns are on course. We're seeing the different candidates traversing the country, selling their vision, selling their party manifestos. And now the MPs have been nominated for, you know, the candidates for the MP races have been nominated. And naturally, you would expect to see their campaign messages also reflect or mirror what their presidential candidates are selling to the public. And across the political divide, everyone wants to sell a vision of making Uganda better, you know, addressing poverty, addressing the high levels of unemployment among young people, and so many others, you know, building improving social services, whether it's in the health sector or education and so on. How do you think, when you look at now the MPs, who are the candidates campaigning for the MP positions, how effectively would you expect, as a voter in this case, to see their messages or the visions they're selling to their voters actually translate to tangible political reforms when they are actually elected and they are on the floor of the House?
Yeah, two things. Before I reach there, I just want to comment on the time from the nomination day to the campaign day. In my view, I think it is too long. If you are nominated on 22nd, and you have to begin campaigns on 10th of the next month, it's like keeping a dog with milk. And you say this dog should behave and sit there with the milk, or a cat with the rat. I don't know whether it is supposed to give an equal space to the candidates, because the incumbents and other people who are supported by big parties are at an advantage. because for them, they will have been there, they have billboards, they have everything. But for a beginner, you are waiting for almost 3 weeks after being nominated. The anxiety and so many things, people may even forget that you are nominated because they are not allowed to campaign now. But even the campaigns, there is, I think some leaders in this country need to behave themselves. I heard the Prime Minister informing people that they should not listen to a certain candidate. They should not even go there. They should remain in their houses. He's a bad person. I thought that was breaking the law. You are not supposed to do malice against any candidate, especially when you are at a level of a Prime Minister of Uganda. And what surprises you, the state conforms to that. They dispatch an helicopter which goes and patches where the candidate is supposed to address people, has asked for permission, has planned, and only to reach there, and you find an helicopter with the, I think they're inciting the people. I was just imagining that the people there are very calm. Supposing it was the other case, where you find people have prepared themselves, they come. First of all, they have been disturbed to reach that place is a big problem. Then they arrive, they find a helicopter where they are supposed to be. I find the Electoral Commission needs to be in charge. And once they have gazetted these areas, they have said people are in a campaign. I don't know why some people should use the state apparatus to tail others from it. Can cause commotion. I was just imagining if it is done to candidate Museveni, who has SFC, has his security as a president, and therefore in my village in Maweito, we say President Museveni should not come here in a primary school where he's supposed to address his people. It can cause havoc. So we really think that the Electoral Commission should be in charge, but the police should also use reason. I don't think that when you become a policeman and put on uniform, you become unreasonable, and therefore you have a license to break the law. So I hope this does not go to MPs when the question you have asked me. But my good members of parliament, I don't think very many of them are going to have anything to tell people that is related to legislation, that is related to resource allocation in parliament, or budgeting as we know it in simple terms, as related to oversight roles of an MP, as related to representation. Because the representation must be dressed in a good gown of human rights, it must be dressed in economic empowerment, must be dressed in those things. What MPs are telling people is that send me so that I go and look for food for you. And this is the Stockholm syndrome that has been developed in this country, a syndrome of tokenism. Somebody puts you in a bondage, then he looks like he's the one who is saving you from the same. So they are deceiving them, how they are going to talk about PDM, more money for PDM. They are not talking about real issues that affect the people. Issues of education, issues of infrastructure development, issues of corruption. One of the biggest problems in this country is corruption. I don't know. And it has become very expensive for our country. The other day, I saw an order paper which was moving around on social media. And all the agenda, all the items to be discussed that day in parliament was borrowing. They want to borrow from this, they want to borrow from that, and want to borrow from the other one. Four items were all borrowing. You would need a parliament then which asks that, has parliament become the borrowing center of government? Because that borrowing, they are borrowing money up to a tune of 10 trillion per year now. Are we going to sustain that? That we have a budget of 50, now 72 trillion, but we are borrowing 10 trillion per year. And we are not borrowing this money to develop infrastructure and develop macroeconomics of the country. We are borrowing to consume, pay salaries, to do this, to give to people who want to construct things which you must have magnifying glasses to see. So I really feel that most MPs are riding on the ignorance of the people. People who may not know the role of an MP, the role of a member of parliament, they don't know the difference between what an MP does, what a councillor at LC or at division level does, what a councillor at LC5 does. So at the end of the day, people are going to be voting by excitement. The excitement, either they will vote somebody because he is putting on yellow, or the other one is putting on red. The issues will remain the same. School fees in private schools is going to continue increasing. The roads network are going to continue collapsing, and yet the parliament will be allocating money everywhere which they cannot oversight. The laws in the country, like we have laws which have been in parliament forever. I don't know what women are going to ask women representatives in parliament. They have been having a number of bills that affect women, and the inheritance, that affect women in ownership of land, that affect men, women, and the other groups of people. I don't know what they are going to ask them. The youth, what are they going to ask the youth contestants, the people who are contesting on youth? Because the youth are the most affected in this country. There are no jobs. They are suffering from torture from the state apparatus. They are the ones who have vagaries of going to provide slavery abroad, and many of these things. Are youth MPs able to convince the youth that when they reach parliament, they are going to raise issues, they are going to come up with bills, they are going to come up with the policies that will help them? Finally, you have the workers. Another person who has been abandoned in this country is the worker. In Uganda, sometimes you wonder how people survive with the terms and conditions that they work with. And that's why there is corruption. Who else would imagine that a public servant in Uganda can pay school fees for one child just, in some of these schools in Kampala here, Wakiso, in Gulu, in Mbale, and so on, is averaging an average of 1 million shillings per term, and yet you earn 300,000. The people have almost abandoned. If you go to district councils and headquarters where people work, you wonder where the council sits. You don't know how they do their work. These days you don't see motorcycles which are used by extension workers who are serving in the villages or in the rural areas. Instead, you see motorcycles of people who are looking for who to arrest because it does not agree with the government. So I think, in my view, workers MP, there are 5, you read there, 5 of them. What do they do? Every time workers must really go for strike for them to be heard. What are they doing there? You have talked about special interest groups, like I talked about youth, I talked about women, persons with disability. Just look at them. Look at our public transport system. How does it cater for a person with disability? Being a teacher, I deal with sometimes I teach students up to the end of semester, and I don't know which disability they have. I'm making fun, they are not laughing. Until later, when I'm asking for coursework or test, and somebody shows you a gesture that I don't hear, and you say you have been in this class for all this semester. How have you been surviving? He says, I copy notes from my friends, and I only survive on looking at you and looking at your gestures. So, and this is in the university. I don't teach in a rural university. I teach in a premier university in Kampala here. And unfortunately, you find those people, a person who would have been very useful because disability is not inability. That's what we believe in our university. So what are these people putting in place to help such people. You have seen in many places our children who have a hearing impairment are called kasiru. Kasiru means a stupid person. But those kids are not stupid.
Yeah.
It's just that they have an impairment which can be dealt with, and that kid, that chap, goes to school and becomes an important person. In Kyambongo University, we have a senior lecturer and a head of department who has a hearing impairment. When you have not spoken to him, you may think he's just like me. So I really think that this country, we need to start thinking about things which work for people.
Thank you. Joseph, let me come to you. Still on the same question of moving beyond the political rhetoric to actually translating this into, to presenting strategies that actually are measurable and can actually turn things around for you guys. Like he's giving the example of this children with special needs at universities, but clearly there's no policy, no interventions to support them. How do you think this crop of politicians seeking elective office would actually turn things around, or should turn things around?
Yeah, I think I'll start with the question of disability that Dr. Ojiambo raised. And Dr. Ojiambo, on this one, I think I'll hit at the institutions that you guys represent, because I'm genuinely quite shocked that, and it's not you, it's about universities and colleges, institutions of higher learning, that you can actually have students who got learning disabilities of that magnitude, and they're not identified as a matter of university policies. Granted, the Minister of Education is somebody who may need training on special needs herself, and we all know that she's possibly the most unlikely individual to innovate programs that would address
but there are technocrats in the Ministry of Education who act in the education spaces and sector who should actually be advising and providing leadership in this issues.
That is true. Mm-hmm. Do they? Do they have the space to do so? Number one. Number two, I get your point. If technocrats did it, then we should actually arrest all politicians, dump them in Luzira, and allow technocrats to run this country. Judith, when Mr. Museveni's friend Idi Amin took over power in 1971, Uganda had, and I hope young listeners are listening, in 1971, when Idi Amin, backed by Western imperialist forces, overthrew the democratically elected government of Uganda, Uganda had the most highly educated, meaning technocratically competent civil service on the continent. Partly because of that, because I'm agreeing with you while disagreeing with you, partly because of that, Dr. Ojiambo, I think you better listen too, because you were still younger than I was. Yeah? Idi Amin's government regime managed to survive up to 1976 or thereabout. It has actually been argued that not only did the technocrats continue to run the government, but actually part of what Amin did, apart from picking some of his sycophants, he picked civil servants to run government. For him, he's interested. So he picked people who were former technocrats to be some of the ministers, to mix them with some of his silly guys. So government generally ran up to 1976 or thereabout, while the economy was collapsing, for the very many reasons of policy directives at the top. Now the contradiction is this, that civil servants will run governments, but civil servants take political instructions. Civil servants take political directives and directions. So civil servants will not always say that from today on, we are going to ban we are going to ban travel to Israel. We are going to ban travel to apartheid South Africa. Those are political decisions. But you will have civil servants who have a sufficient appreciation of some of the implications of these things. So, come to the question of the Ministry of Education. Yes, of course you will have some of this. But if you have civil servants, the other day there was a recruitment for public servants. And I know a number of young people who applied. And I encouraged a number of young people, excuse me, to apply. But Judith, the day that you and I think Dr. Ojiambo came out to the city square. I don't know whether Dr. Ojiambo came
No, he wasn't
for
there.
the tree planting. I met somebody in passing, a young person, who is a massively fantastic young graduate. And I asked her in passing why and if she had applied. And she said she didn't. And she told me she didn't apply because she knew it would be a waste of time. One, basically, in other words, to think about applying, you need to know somebody, so she thinks, and possibly true, in order for you to be merely shortlisted. And for you to be shortlisted, and I knew a few people who were shortlisted, for you to go to the next stage, you need to know somebody. And to basically go through and then get these jobs, you need to know somebody. Now, all these are political decisions, rocked in the civil service mess. So it is that terrible. But back to this then, I am saying that amidst the challenges of lack of political leadership in this country, and this country will not change direction politically in as long as NRA under Mr. Museveni meet this. Nothing's going to change. My hope is just that maybe institutions like universities maybe should, in the course of this mess, try and find ways of intervening to make sure that they do as much of what they can to live with as much of what they can. But generally, it's about political direction. Now, politically, in the broad sense, I don't see that the next parliament is going to be any different from the current one in terms of impact. It may end up actually being worse if you see what happened around NRA primaries, meaning we've picked at the stage of what Dr. Jambo is saying, basically people looking to gun scavenge and make money and do business at Parliament. That is why the biggest tragedy is that at the top for presidency, we have an extremely tired man who is boasting about gains, which gains have been nothing but national tragedy of sinking our country. So gains for themselves against destruction of hope for young people in this country. And for the rest of the other 7 candidates, I don't know any thus far, I'm answering you still on the parliament thing, that has come up with anything specifically major that shakes me, voter Ochieno, that in the event that they became leader, there would be a fundamental change, whether in the economic sphere, in the social sphere, possibly even in the political sphere, in the judicial system, and not only something written in a manifesto, but something presented in a manner in which you see energy in the man. Of course, they're all unfortunately terribly men, saying that, look, if we took over, this is the radical banging of the table we will do. I don't see anything changing. Now, in the absence of that at the top, Judith, and considering therefore the kind of quality of men and women we now have who got nominated on the 23rd and 24th, 2nd and 23rd, I don't know what any of them will be telling their constituents, which are usually different. They will wear their red things and say they're UPC, or they borrowed red from UPC or blue from FDC, and occasionally push the local thing and tell them that we shall extend the road from Bukoko to Mbale, and I will do it when it happens. I really don't think it's going to be anything more than that. And my worry, though, is this, because a very important question you raise, that while that is as it is, the younger people who are predominantly audience will not be tickled, as the word of Dr. Ojiambo, to say, it's another business as usual. So we end up with an element of a status quo, and no change, and the billions of Ugandan shillings will have been wasted by the state, by the lead candidate, and by these people, some money which has been stolen in order to roll on fuel for candidates. And come January, it's business as usual. And come May next year, it's business as usual.
Wow.
I think I am sort of a little bit downtrodden, but may I pray that changes in the next the next few weeks.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I think this wraps up the first session of our conversation. When we return after the break, we'll be looking at other issues, including, of course, the cost of public administration and whether or not we have faith that our MPs can actually walk to that parliament, on the floor of parliament once they're elected, and push for a reform that can actually see that the cost of public administration comes down, starting, of course, with the size of the Legislative House. This is after the break.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the break, and we're glad that you're still with us here on the Citizens Chat Show on Civic Space TV. I'm your host, Judith Atim, and we're now in the second part of our conversation. Of course, we are still on the topic beyond the nominations, the high-stakes agenda for the 2026 MP candidates, and I have with me in the studio Dr. Robert Ojiambo and Mr. Joseph Ochieno sharing their perspectives on this issue. In the second part, I want us now to shift to the question of the cost of public administration. And if you all know, that is a very big issue that we've had for years. How do we confront the bloated bureaucracy? Of course, generally, there is a concern in the country that we must have the skyrocketing cost of running public administration addressed, and this includes the remuneration and perks of the very people we're discussing, the members of parliament. Our national debt is significant, partly due to the perceived bloated government. And time and again, we hear proposals to cut the number of ministers, cut the number of districts, even the size of parliament itself. But now we see more than 500 people will be elected to actually take on, to be part of the 12th parliament. So if I'm to throw the question to you, what questions do we need to actually ask the candidates who are seeking elective office, especially as MPs? What are their priorities when it comes to, what would be the question? I don't want to even ask you what that question. What would you like them to address, Dr. Ojiambo, when it comes to?
Yeah, just to start from where you started the question, you were saying whether I expect some changes, reduction, to make sure that we deal with the cost of administration in Uganda without fearing being labeled a pessimist. So long as there is Project M7 in this country, we should be prepared for the worst. Because just in this campaign, a number of districts are being promised. In Lango, he promised 2. In West Nile, he promised 2. In Acholi, Omoro now is going to be divided into 2. There is already a proposal. In Western Uganda, very many. So you don't see the number, and each time they form a district, they form a city, those are constituencies. So basing on that, no. 2, Project M7 survives on buying support, and support is bought by creating some offices where people earn money without doing anything. Judith, you forget that MPs are just 500 and I think 56 around there. I lost the count. Yeah. I lost the count. Those are just honorable MPs, but we have local government leaders. You also have to count the numbers of districts in Uganda, and those are LC5 chairmen. Then I don't know how many sub-counties and divisions we have here, which have their mayors and the chairmen. Then we have counselors. We have, so in total, not to bore the viewers, we have about 3 million offices of politicians who must earn or at least supported to be in that office. In addition, you need the support staff of the NRM. The support staff of NRM include RDCs, RCCs, deputy RDCs, and now assistant RDCs and RCCs. Those ones now are also more than 300. They are there. They must get a vehicle, they must get an office, they must get a pay, they must get escorts, they must get, I don't know, all sorts of things. Doing nothing. If you look at them, there is no value addition. If you sent them home today, we shall not fail to sleep. We shall continue to sleep so long as we have UPDF, we have Uganda Police, we shall continue to exist. Then you have people at the secretariat who almost do nothing. They do nothing. They always deceive us here. If Which was here would have defended himself, that they get salary from there. Seven himself said he cannot afford to pay those people. But each one of them has a vehicle, they have motorcycles, they have airtime, they have an office, they have everything. So the cost of administration in Uganda is terribly big. It wouldn't have been bad if they were paying civil servants who are providing services to the people in the name of doctors, in the name of teachers, in the name of local administrators and the town clerks. That would not be a problem. But those ones, as I've always said variously here, are just 367,000. Badly supervised, no system. Some of them even have never gone to their office for the last 6 months, but they are earning salary. So that compounded together, the cost of administration, Judith, is only going to increase with the dwindling provision of services. That is the irony, that the numbers are increasing, the cost is too high, but so long as these people are playing one role, making sure that the old man continues to protect their gains, as they have put on their manifesto. Number two, your hope is that NRM or MPs will go to parliament and reduce on their size. That is demanding too much from them. It's like sending a thief to protect your property. That you thief, go and protect my property. They are not going to do that because many of them would want that even those numbers are increased so that it is easier for them taking the law of probability. The more offices, the more chances that these fake people can go to parliament. When I was doing research about 20 years ago on constitutionalism, I happened to have interviewed two great men of this country. Abu Mayanja Kachama. I remember I had almost 2 weeks engagement with this man, and Cuthbert Obwangor. Abu Mayanja Kachama said when he came here to become an MP, he had just come from UK as a student, and they were really lobbying him, and he had the chance to stand in UPC. He had the chance to stand in Kabaka Yeka and many others. And therefore, they were struggling for him because of the quality of the person he was. Cuthbert Obwangor, on the other side, was not so much sophisticated as in education, but was a very experienced man. For those who may not know him, this is one of the person who resigned from a ministry and went back home, never to contest again in politics because of what was happening. He was a UPC steward and a minister then, but he didn't agree with certain things the way they were happening. He resigned and went back home. And he lived in his house in Soroti until when death took him recently. So it shows you the caliber of people we used to have then and the caliber of people that we have now. Majority of the people we have now are job seekers. And don't expect these job seekers that they will go to parliament to reduce on their chances of being in office. So they are already conflicted. They are already conflicted. Don't expect anything from them unless we had a good leader at the center who comes up maybe with a government bill and forces it on them. But also it would get a lot of problems. I don't know where you would get money to bribe them to accept what you are saying. If you have been following parliament this week, in the last sitting, parliament was improving on their emoluments. As they are planning to exit, they are instead increasing our cost. For example, if you took an MP from Karamoja, just using Karamoja as an example because it's the farthest, it will give us a good picture. Karamoja or West Nile in Yumbe takes 55 million shillings as emolument and 6 million as the salary. So if you put that together, that is 61 million. They are saying that when they come in the next parliament, the moment MP arrives in parliament, he should be given 75 million for fuel because they feel they have not yet had no capacity to sustain their vehicles. The vehicles are moving from 200 million shillings to 250 million. And many allowances, sitting allowance, house allowance, and what have you.
So just a moment, Dr. Jama. That's 75 million for fuel. That is for
one-off.
A one-off.
Yes.
Okay.
For you to settle in parliament. They have given you a vehicle of 250 million. Then they give you fuel, one-off. Because the argument was that they're giving them these huge vehicles and yet they have just come from the constituency.
Now, why can't they settle for smaller vehicles that
No, the smaller vehicles, according to late Apollo Sivambi, cannot manage the bad roads. In Uganda, I remember Apollo Sivambi one time standing on the floor of parliament and saying that ministers and MPs need to be given huge vehicles, four-wheel drive, because the roads in Uganda are impassable.
Who appropriates the funding or budget for the roads? It's okay, let's carry on.
It is them. It is them, and I told you the monitoring is poor because majority of them don't even have capacity. They even don't know what they're supposed to be doing in parliament. So we are really expecting a lot from them. I don't think that any member of parliament, especially from NRM, is going to come with a private member's bill. And the title of that bill is to reduce on the number of constituencies or the number of that would die on arrival. Because, first of all, the movement caucus will never accept it because that's what they promise people. Right now, they are promising people that when you vote me, I will push for this village to become a city, a district. We shall divide the constituency so that we stop fighting with so and so. So you don't think that that type of person is going to reach there and make a turnaround and go to what you are trying to say. So we need a huge fundamental change from top. In fact, we need a tsunami in this country if it was possible. You need a huge tsunami that bombards the thing from the top. And then because of the crisis that will have been created by the tsunami, people can come back to their senses and say, wait a minute, do we need 81 ministers? Wait a minute, do we need 400 RDCs, RCCs, and assistant RDCs and assistant? Wait a minute, do we need all these caricature of local government administrators who have no role to play in the provision of services? Wait a minute, do we need all these exorbitant allowances that we are giving to MPs so much so that MP now is the most lucrative thing? MP and pastor are the most lucrative things in Uganda right now. So for me, I tend to say that yes, that is what we would have wanted. But I don't see these MPs, these men of them, I call them dancing politicians who are dancing for people on podiums without telling them what to hear. You saw what was happening recently in the north, in the east. You now have people who are competing to dance Lingala and other things. I used to think that those are things of the bar or some places where people are having hare in the evening after working. The people are there cheering them, and they say, yeah, vote us so that we bring you more dancing and these other things. So I don't think that what you are saying may happen. I'm not a pessimist, but you look at how things are moving. Of course, any sensible Ugandan would be thinking that we need to concentrate more on service delivery because our hospitals are dead, our schools are kaput, our road network is, I don't know which word to use, you just see what they are deceiving all the people, that through this SAGE program, that they are giving you 20,000 shillings, and 20,000 shillings you have to hire boda to go to the other place. So these are things we need. We need a better social service nets than those things. And those ones would require to reduce the cost on administration and push the money on service delivery. The politicians, especially the ruling party, is they have mortgaged our country. They have mortgaged our country for power. Uganda now is exporting more gold than we have ever exported. We are exporting coffee. We are going back to our good old days. We are getting a lot of money from taxes. But at the end of the day, people like me who pay taxes painfully, I don't really see whether this MP is going to help me to get out of the problem that I am in. And two, you don't see the alternative because of the system that has been created. Look at the political parties, which would have been our mouthpieces. Because political parties, in a normal political party, multi-party dispensation, we would be having now NRM, which is fronting a number of candidates. MPs would be fronting the NRM manifesto. Then you have FDC, the same. NUP would be doing the same. Now, after those three, the others, where do they, do you think Peasant Party, where even the leader of Peasant Party is a supporter of NRM, is going to do anything? There is this other party, Conservative Party. I used to know it as a Conservative Party. Now it is fronting Mabirizi. Who are the people who are going to promote what Mabirizi is talking about? How many MPs have they fronted in Uganda? I don't know how many. And if they have fronted them, how many are going to go through? The old parties, of course, have died of old age. All of them are gone. I think it's because of old age. They have died with their founders. DP, UPC, KY. KY died long ago, but these ones have been struggling at least. Now, in this election, we are going to give them a decent burial.
Thank you, Dr. Ojiambo. Joseph, still on the issue of cost of public administration. And I mean, as a voter, ultimately a voter deserves to know how their elected MP would ideally balance their personal gain with national austerity. And I don't want to throw that question to you because I know you're not seeking elective office as an MP, but I'd like to have that outer perspective. You were in the House of Commons. How are things done elsewhere to ensure that the national interest takes priority over an individual's interest? What lessons can we borrow from elsewhere to actually help us fix the mess that we find ourselves in?
You know, when this bunch came from the bush 40 years ago, they sought to break the neck of political parties. And with that, they sought to break the neck of competitive politics. That broke the neck of politics of ideology. It broke the neck of politics of issues, and then introduced personal merit politics. And that was politics of me, myself, and I. That is the politics which has now been perfected. While political parties that were then CP sort of faded off, Conservative Party. UPM sneaked itself into NRA, which is the governing, ruling thing at the moment, which was a reject anyway. DP, which voluntarily offered itself to be part of the killing of political parties, but then by the time Paul Semogere woke up 10 years later, they were half alive to please Dr. Ojiambo. And then they've struggled since then, and now they're with Norbert Mao. UPC, on the other hand, which was basically primarily the target, thankfully is an ideologically driven political party. The values of political parties and political competition as out of independence was that KY presented itself as a monarchist, conservative political party with a particular view on not federalism, and drove it, but within a conservative arrangement. DP presented itself as a conservative party by and large, maybe that's what they are. But the alternative political party, which luckily went ahead to govern, it was quite clearly ideologically clear that it was a progressive left political party that believed in big government, ironically, but public services, growing the economy, injecting public services, investing in infrastructure, investing in education, investing in health. A very clear position on regional policies, Pan-Africanist policies, and global policy. That is how politics works across the world. You asked me from some of the experiences beyond the boundaries of this country. Basically, that's what it is. And that you bring it home for the younger viewers. That ever happened in this country? Where at elections, if you take us back to 1980 general elections, I know sometimes it bores certain people, but it's a convenience bore to them because they don't want to live in realities and they're doing a disservice to the future of this country. That when you go back to 1980 elections, even after Idi Amin, you'd see that UPC was the only political party that came with a manifesto, but I'm not saying discrediting the others. So in your manifesto proposal that you present to people, you say, this is what we will do, or this is what we will do if elected. It would be very interesting for people like Dr. Ojiambo, who are scholars, to read what DP was saying, because they didn't have a manifesto, but whatever they're saying in their campaigns. It would also be very interesting to read on what, say, Museveni was saying. Museveni, all I know, was saying that, well, they would democratize the gun, which now they've gone. So the gun is so everywhere that askaris carry them in the supermarkets. Fast forward to where we are. As I said at the beginning, Judith, and I know we don't have much time, in this election process, it's almost like a mini escort thing for Mr. Museveni, and possibly we hope maybe Chagulanyi surprises us with this political organization. But what does NRA present to the people this time around? What is that so-called gain that they seek to protect? What exactly is the other alternative? They don't exist. As I said, in an event that UPC was present as a political party competing at a national level, the likely programs that would be a socialist program and a social democratic program that would address issues of fiscal discipline and investment in public services. The conversation at this level should be that when we come into government, this is what political parties should say. This is what we have in terms of national deficit. This is by how much we would reduce and how. This is how much we would borrow, and we would borrow them over a period of this and to invest in areas. You justify it to the population. This is how much we would do on infrastructure. This is how much it would cost. And this is how much we would gain through monetary and fiscal policy programs in terms of taxation or perhaps borrowing, and perhaps whatever you regenerate through other domestic productivity thing, that programs that you put in place. The big size of government is, I don't think, a policy thing. It's basically an urgent commonsensical question. Judith, it can be done, and it's not a matter that should necessarily be left for individual members of parliament. It's a political party position, and that's why I'm saying that in the event that there was a UPC candidate in Joseph Ochieno, I was bound to deliberately say, this is what UPC will do. And you expect UPC parliamentary candidates and local council candidates to say, this is what we will do. And what would we do? We would reduce the size of parliament off head by no less than, 1/3, for argument's sake. You would reduce the size of cabinet by 50%. And by that I'm saying it for the first time here, that I am very, very anxiously considering a possibility that what Museveni calls democracies for local councils, I actually don't know what local council 2s do. I don't know what local council 4s do. I am not quite sure whether, and I'm looking at Nagongera, I'm not really quite sure whether we need those elected number of local councillors as LC3 equivalent to run for the number and the size that they have for the equivalent wards, that they're still too big from a perspective. Local council 5s, I'm actually not quite sure whether we cannot necessarily reduce these numbers and basically tame their perspective. This nonsense that they're people's representatives when it's actually costing the taxpayers is something that should and need to be reduced. Kenya reviewed their position and created this county government. But the Kenyan county government are actually a devolution that seems to be impressively working, and that you have governors on their equivalent running mini sub-regions, meaning my Bukedi would actually be equivalent of a county equivalent of a government with elected representatives, but they actually run local services, including possibly local taxation. So those are things that we do. These are the debates that I'm not quite sure whether the current crop of politicians, guys who've been nominated the other day, plus some of these presidential candidates, are willing and prepared to take. You take it to the people. But when you do that, Judith, and you tell the people that this is how much it costs for the size of parliament, this is how much it costs for the size of local government, and this is what would be the equivalent of opportunity costs. People begin to find this interesting. And I can tell you, Judith, you run with these things, and you have Fourth Estate yourselves as the media, helping to run with this as part of a civic campaign side by side with the parliamentary candidates. This thing would gain traction, and you reach a stage in which maybe you find even an area where it's predominantly NRA, you find voters saying that, look, I'm asking you, NRA parliamentary candidate, are you willing to support the UPC position that if you went to parliament, you would be willing to do this as part of it? That, by and large, is what should happen. Now, a future UPC government, from my perspective, would actually abolish this nonsense. It's a criminality, this business of giving people who come into parliament money for cars, because I know it does not happen in democracies, does not happen in countries from where we beg and borrow for money. I know members of parliament who ride on bicycles, and I have members of parliament, including ministers, in countries beyond this country, beyond this continent, who use trains and buses, particularly trains, to go to work. So why should we pay legislators in this crude banana republic, some of whom are people, whose parents were cattle herders who could not even afford 3 cows to marry their mothers? So why should we give them 250 million Uganda shillings to buy cars and pay for fuel? Those are things, these are open debates that we need to be able to have openly and radically. In any case, actually, the more we have that conversation, the more, as Dr. Ojiambo says, people will begin to find politics, meaning parliament, not an attractive business, but a place to go ahead and serve. And I genuinely believe that amongst the many young people who are watching this program, there are some 30, 28-year-old young Ugandans who are actually decent and committed enough to realize that it's about their future, who will be coming up to stand for parliament. And by that, I'd rather have those ones trained and guided on national values and protecting their future, to become actually decent legislators, other than people who are actually out there to go ahead and mint money.
Well, thank you. And in just 4 minutes, I would like to give you 2 minutes each to just share your final thoughts on whatever we've been discussing today. Dr. Ojiambo, 2 minutes.
Yeah, Judith, is a good thing, as I always say, that we are not preparing to go for war, because if we were preparing to go for war, it would be a different thing. Instead, we are preparing to go for a semblance of an election, which I normally call a selection, especially for the head of state. We are just doing a selection, and even in other places, we are not going to have what we call elections. but maybe to encourage the voters out there, those who are really interested in voting, that yes, let's go and vote, and let's go and try and vote for people who are going to bring meaningful change to our people.
Thank you. Joseph.
I just hope that at the moment that more younger people, in fact, more young people get interested. I really, really hope that young people, particularly all those who are registered to vote, participate in the election process. But I really also hope that young people move away from following people like zombies over these monies and commit themselves to change. Now, that change is one which, whichever political organization you go with, you should actually be seeking to know that, well, unless we're able to have a change of direction in this country. I've just returned from Kenya, and I travel around this world. I can tell you, Kenyans are laughing at Ugandans. But the Kenyans, including average, Kenyan from the slum, quote, without prejudice, is laughing at Uganda. They think we don't have brains because they can't understand how we could manage, to kneel down for this failed 40 years of a monolithic regime confined to one family, confined to a few individuals, where people in politics go ahead and make huge amount of monies, and we're having zero, and I mean zero, public services. I think it's time for Ugandans to mobilize themselves, particularly young Ugandans, to mobilize and organize themselves. But the more they do that, the more they should also be reading history. I insist that young Ugandans should read Ugandan history. Young Ugandans should read contemporary African history. Young Ugandans should be able to read about what's going on in other African countries, so that young Ugandans is able to recognize that better is possible.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to you both. And to you who is watching, well, the nomination hurdle has been cleared. The focus now is on the substance of the people we elect. So to you, the electorate, you need to demand better. You need to set higher standards for yourselves. When these people come knocking on your doors, asking for your votes, you also have to ask them pertinent questions like, how do they plan to create a more affordable life for your family? How will they champion a less expensive government? Well, the campaign period starting November 10th is your chance to scrutinize their manifestos before they assume office. My name is Judith Atim. Thank you very much, Dr. Robert Ojiambo, and thank you very much, Mr. Joseph Ochieno. We've been discussing the topic beyond nomination of MPs, the high-stakes agenda for the 2026 MP candidates here on the Citizens Chat Show on Civic Space TV. We're glad that you've been with us till now, and we do appreciate you if you drop us a comment and be a part of the conversation. The Citizens Chat Show returns next week, same time. Until then, we wish you a pleasant weekend.